As a longtime educator, wellness instructor, and coach for women rebuilding after major life shifts, I deeply understand the challenges of reconnecting with your mind, body, and purpose so you can live grounded, confident, and whole. I'm Dr. Molly Kirby, your host, and welcome to Rooted Conversations by Reinnovate You Coaching, where your healing becomes your roots and your growth becomes your new way of being. Through grounding conversations, practical tools, and valuable insights, Rooted Conversations empowers you to reconnect with yourself, to release what no longer serves you, and to reinnovate the person you're becoming. If this sounds just like the thing you've been looking for, subscribe to the podcast and join me on this journey to reset, renew, and reinnovate you. Welcome back, and thanks for tuning in to Rooted Conversations by Reinnovate You. This episode is rooted in a topic that's getting a lot of attention, GLP-1s. We'll be discussing today what they mean for our health, identity, and our long-term well-being. I'm joined today by Emily Pitman, a registered nurse and MSN. She is a contractor with Hydromed IV Therapy. Emily brings a clinical perspective to this evolving space by helping us understand the basics. We're also joined by Dr. Angelika Gulbis, a sociology professor and co-owner of Grantably and Coachably Consulting. Angelika will offer a powerful lens on the personal implications of GLP-1 use. Let's dive right into an honest and thoughtful conversation about GLP-1s. Emily, I'm going to pose the first question to you. Can you tell everybody what GLP-1s are, what they're used for, and who are they for?
Sure. And I can make this fairly simple. GLP-1 receptor agonists increase hormones and they help control hunger and blood sugar. We first learned about GLP-1s with blood sugar control, but has since been known to help with weight loss. They boost the release of insulin in the body when the blood sugar rises. And then it also reduces glucagon, and glucagon is a hormone that raises the blood sugar. It slows the speed of digestion, so meals are more satisfying and you don't feel like you have to eat as much. And it signals the brain to promote a feeling of fullness. So that way you don't overeat, which a lot of us tend to try to do sometimes. And you also ask about who they're for. So GLP-1s are approved for adults who have type 2 diabetes, of course, obesity with a BMI of 30, and also with patients or people with a BMI of 27 with at least one weight-related condition. An example of that is high blood pressure.
So I do know that some people take it and they lose 5 or 10 pounds, maybe 20 to go to the beach. Is that common? Is that something we see as well?
Yes, I would say so. It is a quick loss. And I'm speaking on that just from my personal experience. When I did do it, I lost weight pretty quick in the beginning. So you do see that, instant gratification kind of with this.
Okay. And for those of you all that are listening out there, if you're not sure what a GLP-1 is, I'm sure you have been bombarded in your social medias and in the news, your inboxes and everything. These are the drugs that are like Ozempic, Wegovy, those kind of things. So I think by now most people know that that's associated with GLP-1. So, and I talked a little bit here about people who want to look good for the beach, but you have a really wide scope of people who are interested in taking these medications. So we have everywhere from 15 to 20 pounds. I had a friend in particular who was running a marathon and needed to lose 15, 20 pounds so she could bring her speed up a little bit. She took, I believe it was Wegovy. It worked for her. She stopped taking it, ran the race, did a good job. I also have had friends that needed to lose upwards of 150, 200 pounds, and it worked really well for them. Angelika, I'm going to throw this one at you. So we've talked a lot about differences in the past when we've had conversations, just the two of us, that, there's one avatar, as you call it, that's someone who needs to lose that 10 or 15 pounds. And then there's someone on the other side of that spectrum. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal experience and how these GLP-1s have impacted your life?
Yeah. So, and I just want to make clear for the listeners, I'm not a medical doctor, so this really is my own story. I have a PhD, but it's in sociology. So just, this isn't medical advice from me. This is like my own story. Interestingly, when you say that about the two different kind of groups, it never really occurred to me, but yeah, those are very different groups. The groups that are taking it for quick weight loss that already that don't really have a problem with food per se, do need to lose weight quickly for whatever, like your friend with the marathon or whatever. For me, and I just never really thought from that perspective, because for me, I had a significant amount of weight to lose and I had already been losing weight I lost about 50 pounds on my own through that sort of traditional, I went to a nutritionist for a really long time. Learned I had to sort of relearn how to eat. My eating patterns had gotten really bad. And I had never really had a solid foundation in really good eating. I grew up in the 70s and my mother and father both worked. And after my father died, I was a latchkey kid. And I was a person whose family already had a history of obesity. So I wasn't a product of like, oh, well, junk food. Everybody started eating junk food or processed. No, I ate cauliflower. My mom was a brilliant cook for guests, but a terrible everyday cook. And we would eat cauliflower and white rice and white fish often for dinner and things like that. So I was just, I had kind of a moon face. People would always call me fat. And I'm like, I don't really eat that much. So I'm kind of this genetic, person. My parents are both from Latvia. That's between Estonia and Lithuania and the Baltic Sea, close to like Norway and Finland and things like that. So a cold area, cold climate. And I think that's why I have these genetic sort of predisposition to having a little bit more weight. And in Latvia, that was seen as a really good thing. My mother was very proud to have a child that, wasn't like overly thin, right? That was seen as a marker of a really healthy baby. And so the universe and the world and everybody started, from a very young age telling me that I was fat. So I had a lot of cultural factors influencing and biological and genetic socialization factors. I had all these different reasons why I began to put more and more weight on. And then, of course, upon my father's death, depression entered the picture. And around the same time, puberty started to set in, and then hormones affected my eating. And I began to gain a lot of weight. And this is around 6th grade. And then the more weight I gained, I also had these cultural pressures and like, my peers and things like that. I was bullied for my weight. It would just make me gain more and more weight. By the time I was out of high school, I had gained a lot of weight. And then I decided upon graduation to lose a bunch of weight. And I did. And I got very thin, and I was very thin for a long time, and I was able to sustain it because I worked in restaurants and bars all day long. So I had learned a new way of eating, and it seemed to work for me. I then had an injury and started graduate school kind of all at the same time. I started working less in the restaurant. So for me, movement made it so that I became much more sedentary, right? I wasn't able to move as much anymore. And I started putting on weight really quickly because there's this set point, I guess, in your body, and your body remembers that set point of an obesity. And so it kind of went back up. I think I had weighed something like 210 pounds after I got out of high school. So I quickly went right up to that as soon as I became sedentary. And then I just continued to gain weight, particularly when I developed things like anemia and things like that later on. And it was harder and harder for me to move. And weight has been a problem for me most of my life. And it got to the point where in adulthood, it's just different than it is in childhood, particularly, I think, prior to puberty. And I didn't know how to eat correctly anymore, especially being in graduate school and having to work in restaurants and stuff. There were no good schedules, and I had really lost how to eat. I didn't really understand that very well anymore, or how much I was eating. So I got that all under control from a nutritionist starting around 2015. I've literally been working with her for the past 9 or 10 years. Like, I've been working with her for a very long time. I learned to turn my eating patterns around immediately, or not immediately. I lost 50 pounds very slowly over 5 years, about 10 pounds per year. And then this was right around the time the GLP-1s were emerging. I went to my doctor and I said, I've done my due diligence. I have a really great eating plan. That's one thing that I think a lot of people kind of should do, is have a really great eating plan and know. And my nutritionist agrees with me that a lot of people should really understand how to really eat healthfully and well, really, before they get into GLP-1s. And I went to my doctor, and this was around the time those GLP-1s were coming out. And she said, actually, I agree with you. I think this is good for you. You meet a lot of the conditions as to why a GLP-1 would work for you. So let's do it. And I immediately lost weight. And I immediately became very angry. And the reason I became angry was because I realized that, the world around me sort of helped to create my obesity, especially environmental and food factors and things like that, but also the way that people treated me. And I was doing the right things. I was eating well. And, especially in that past like 5 years, but there were other times I'd try to like diet and I would do well, but it just wasn't sustainable. And it was because I was already like at this point, of obesity. And it's not like a willpower thing. Like once you have obesity, I had no idea that obesity in itself, it's part of your endocrine system, and fat cells send out signals. And I didn't know that. And I'm like, well, this makes total sense. Of course, this is so hard for me. So I was really angry. I was like, I'm dropping weight like nothing. This is fine. And I'm eating very well and I'm having a few side effects, but man, it even helped me how to like eat even better and be able to even be more in control of my health, which is really great. So it's really hard for me to like when I hear people like, I think I'm never going to judge. And I think people should take this if they want to take it. And if that's what their doctor says they should do. But for me, for being an obese person, I see that as you have a very different need and it's so much more life-changing, I would argue, than, losing 15 pounds for a race or something like that. For me, it was all about my life really did change because I am infinitely healthier on all like markers, like blood pressure and glucose and all of the things that we know are involved with metabolic syndrome. So that's kind of the full story of what happened. And then if anybody ever wants to know, I do have some recommendations on what you can do for side effects that helped me. But that anger, I'm finally not angry anymore. I'm happy and I'm just free. And GLP-1 is something I'm going to have to be on the rest of my life. And I know that, but it also is very protective of my health and it has made my quality of life so much better.
I do really want to get back to the things that you did to help with the side effects, but let's turn to Emily. And Emily, you mentioned that you also took a GLP-1 for a while. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's story is different, so we'd like to hear where you're coming from.
Yeah. I unfortunately ended up having to have a hysterectomy early in my 30s, threw me all off. And of course, weight gain was part of that. No matter what I did, I couldn't do anything, to make it go away. It just stayed. So my doctor recommended that we try a GLP-1 and we started on Mounjaro. That worked really well, but I stayed nauseated a lot with that one. So we went down to Ozempic and my body liked that one a little bit better. And I believe I lost, before insurance stopped paying, I believe I lost around 30 pounds. And I felt like Emily again. I had become like a total hermit. I didn't want to go anywhere. I wanted no one to see me. And I know that's probably my own issue with my own image, but as being a woman, that is there, that you have that. So it really did help. I do want to look into it again now that there are other options. I just started putting myself into my work and just keeping up with the diet that I had come up with when I was on the GLP-1. And I have maintained what I did lose. And now I think I want to do it again now that it's an option for me. So I can get to where I need to be. Not that where I want to be, but I need to be too, because I want to, have my blood pressure in check and things like that. There's medications that I don't want to be on. And I believe that controlling your weight, losing the weight, that can help you with that. So that's what I want to do. And as far as side effects go, nausea was the biggest for me. I had a little bit of hair loss with it associated with that, but I didn't have the really bad ones that I've heard people talk about. I don't know if I wasn't on it long enough to get into all of the other side effects of it, but mine were manageable.
Yeah, those are the two things that I hear of a lot. I read an article this morning about people that are older, especially women that are older. They really, really want to go on this, but the Medicare issue, Medicare did cover it. And now it does again, but it doesn't pay as much as it used to. And now you don't need a prescription. Sometimes it's cheaper to get it without a prescription than it is to have a prescription and go through your insurance. It's just really kind of confusing. What's the best way to do it if you do want to do the GLP-1s? And I do know that there are some drugs out there that are GLP natural kind of things too. I've been hearing a lot about that. Some of the IV therapies you may know more about, Emily. Also berberine and some of these things that people are using. Can you tell us a little bit about those? Because it gets confusing, especially if you don't know. What's the difference between taking, Mounjaro or Ozempic and taking one of these natural GLP-1s?
With my IV hydration business, we do have a weight loss drip that we do. It's vitamin C, B complex, B12, biotin, and MIC. And what that does, it doesn't actually work like a GLP-1. This drip does not. It is a good maintenance for when you're doing weight loss. It also offers hydration, which is a huge thing with the GLP-1s because dehydration from the vomiting, if that is one of your symptoms, the nausea, diarrhea. There's also constipation, and you want to have fluids, magnesium, things like that, that will help with all of those side effects. So getting IV hydration, if you can work that into your plan, is great for helping to increase and maintain what you do with the GLP-1 weight loss.
Yeah. So, with the side effects, are there ways that people can get around having these side effects? I know I have heard stories and read stories and some of the research that a lot of people have a different relationship with food and then they just don't eat or they don't eat what they need, which is one of the things that I really like to talk about a lot is making sure that these diets that people are on, that you don't take away a whole food group or a whole, part of things that you need. So are some of these things that you can alleviate by being on a proper diet, or is this just a side effect that's going to be because of how GLP works?
I wouldn't think that it would be just a side effect. I think that they can be manageable. And Angelique, didn't you have something that you said that you worked toward your side effects that helped?
Yeah. So for me personally, I know that everybody, like you were saying, experiences it differently. But for me, I had at the beginning some nausea and really just when I would first take the shot. I think it also, and don't quote me on this, but I do know you can put the shot in different places. So you can put it in your belly, you can put it in your arm, and you can put it in your leg. It absolutely terrified me, the idea of putting it in my belly. So I never, ever have. I also hear, though, that the places can vary the effectiveness of the drug for you. And so from the people that talk about severe nausea it sounded like a lot of them were doing it in their belly, at least the online people that I talked to. So again, don't quote me, but that's who I'm hearing. I've always only done it in my thighs now I do it in the back of my arm. And it seems to be like right for me, I guess. But the side effect of nausea I had at the beginning, and I don't really ever get now. The only time I get it now is if I've eaten sort of like a steak, like a ribeye, and it has a lot of fat in it. Something with a lot of fat in it, I can have trouble with sometimes. And usually, though, that's only if I have recently taken the Mounjaro shot and not like further out. You take it once weekly. So for me, the things that work are ginger. I take about a teaspoon and sometimes even more. And I just put it in a little cup because I really hate ginger. I don't like the taste of it at all, but I'm getting used to it. And then I swish it around or I stir it around with a spoon and I shoot it like a shot. And then I drink water behind it. But if you like ginger, you can just put ginger in a full glass. And water is key though, because water also helps you to lose weight. Like fat is flushed out with water, I guess. That's my understanding. So again, with the hydration. So doing that stops my nausea pretty much instantly within 5 minutes, even with my really bad nausea after eating a ribeye steak. I know I'm going to get it, so I take take the ginger right away. And the nausea goes away immediately. And some other tricks I have are just like having it for if you have constipation, for example, since GLP-1s do hold food in your system, I make sure to maintain really good regularity. And so I make sure I have enough magnesium, and that's going to be different for everybody, but, and to have a good quality magnesium. So start learning about magnesium because there are a zillion different kinds and some of them are good for you. And some of them are like kind of cheap and that's the ones you get in the grocery store or whatever, and Miralax. And so for the beginning, when you're having those bad nausea symptoms, those things can be really helpful. And I think kind of like safe. There are things you should talk about with your doctor, and your doctor could probably help you figure out like a nausea protocol because it's probably going to happen. But yeah, it goes away pretty quickly. For some people, it stays forever though, but they feel like it's worth it. So to you.
So another one that I've read a little bit about, Serena Williams, as a matter of fact, is where I kind of got that, was the idea that you lose muscle mass. Emily, what could cause you to lose muscle mass from taking GLP-1s?
Well, that's your body, once you're losing things, you're also using protein, which is a muscle builder. So it is very important to stay a good high protein diet is really, really good when you're on GLP-1. It can also affect the organs in your body. Again, that is from just losing what your body needs. So it's very important to get the correct supplements and a very good balanced diet with this. Fiber, protein, those are essential when you're taking GLP.
So, do either of you have anything else you'd like to add for our listeners about GLP-1s? We talked a little bit about body image, about our culture, about health, about how you need to stay on a good diet, get plenty of protein. I would probably suggest too that if you find that maybe there's underlying problems to your weight gain, that maybe therapy, these things can go a long way in helping with some of these situations. But is there anything else, Emily or Angelica, you would like to offer to the listeners?
Just for the listeners, I'd like to say that there are people that they recommend not to have GLP-1s, and that would be if you're pregnant, if you or your family have a history of thyroid cancer, endocrine neoplasia type 2 is another one, and if you've ever had pancreatitis, they kind of try to avoid those with that. That would be up to talking to your doctor, to make sure that you're safe to get these GLP-1s, but I just wanted to let people know that there are some things that you would not be able to get it for.
Yeah.
Angelica, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I guess, yeah. There's also a misconception, I think, out there that, this is like an easy way to lose weight or something like that. And I just want to emphasize that yeah, you're going to drop some weight pretty quickly, but it's not easy. Like you said, there are consequences of things like nausea or constipation, or some people kind of get opposite and have other stomach kind of issues, or even something as severe as pancreatitis and gastroparesis and really severe conditions. So I think that's something to think about. I did lose my hair. I lost a significant amount of my hair, and people kept saying it's not the weight loss drug. It's not the weight loss drug. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Somebody else I know on the weight loss drug also lost their hair. And so I guess it's because you lost the weight, but it's not the drug per se. So I don't know. But I would get really cold at first. That doesn't happen to me anymore. But, there are real things you need to consider here, But on the whole, like I said, it helped me recognize that I wasn't just a horrible human being who had no self-control, that I was doing things correctly, particularly the diet. And I love that you emphasized the protein and the fiber. Protein and fiber, I never realized how important they are for building muscle and making you feel full. And if your muscles are built well, then you are aging well. You can lose weight more rapidly. They work while you're sitting, if you have worked them out. So protein is a really huge thing. So making sure that you get about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per kilogram of weight. So convert your weight into kilograms. And then I just use the one, because then that means that's how much protein I use, is whatever my weight is in kilograms. And I make sure I get at least that. And I have at least 25 grams of protein, which can be, or fiber, which can be difficult to achieve. And I found all kinds of ways of achieving the right amount of fiber, because that is also what's going to help you to stay really full. And for those of us with the history of obesity, that's probably, I think, one of the key messages that people just want to hear. How do I feel full? How do I get that noise out of my head, the food talking to me saying, what am I going to eat next? Because I'm constantly hungry. Fiber will immediately, and protein too. But for me, fiber, I make sure I'm drinking stuff that has fiber, like maybe a fiber supplement, or it'll make me feel full, and it makes me feel free because of it. I have freedom now.
Yeah. There are a couple of other things that I'd like to mention, and we can talk about in other podcasts as we go on, but they're doing a lot of research with GLP-1s now about kidney disease and being able to treat that. There has been some research with dementia, but it's inconclusive at this point. Also looking at things like AFib and heart disorders, but that's just preliminary right now. And as that research comes, we can talk to doctors and such as the podcast goes on. But I think this was a very good summary about what GLP-1s are, the good things that they can do, and a way to get rid of some of the symptoms if you need it, and also who doesn't need to take it. I think that if you already have problems with things like IBS, Crohn's disease, some autoimmunes, you should check with your physician before you take these, because there are places online where you can order these without having a prescription. It still is a great idea to consult a physician before you do. I really appreciate you, Emily and Angelika, for joining me today to talk about this very important subject as people are getting bombarded with information about GLP-1s. And it's really confusing about what's out there. It's good to talk to people who have actually taken GLP-1s at some point or another, had some successes with them. So I really appreciate you joining me today and talking to our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Rooted Conversations by Reinnovate You Coaching and for seeking clarity and truth in your health and wellness journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps us grow and reach more listeners like you. For resources and updates, follow us on social media or visit riucoaching.com. Until next time, stay grounded,